Okay, so this is what we are doing. It's called Line Drawing Techniques. It's just a worksheet that you're going to work through to understand different techniques with pen and ink. Basically, all I want from you is, first off, put your name up on it because they all look identical because worksheets are identical. Oh my God. That's my name. Wow. Brittany Thomas. So the first thing that you're going to do is short dashes, and everything is labeled underneath here. Short dashes is good for fur. It's a way that you can like layer on top to create fur. The other thing for short dashes, you don't have to fill this whole thing in, but short dashes can also be like this. So it can create maybe a texture, but that's short dashes. Now hatching is just line. Usually it's line that is relatively even. Cross hatching is line that crosses. Okay, the closer your lines are, the darker it's going to be. So for hatching, when you go like wider, it's gonna look lighter. When you go like closer lines, it's gonna look darker, okay, as opposed to being like further away, okay? Stippling or dots. When you're doing stippling, you want to hold and control your pen like this. I don't want to see this. This is not what I want. I want you to control what you are doing. If you are pushing too hard with the pen, you're gonna ruin it. And I don't want you to ruin my Sharpies because, again, I've been through so many of them already this year. Try not to ruin them. So really lightly use the pen and don't press too hard. Wavy lines is another one of those like textural things. You can use wavy lines to create value but also texture. Scribbles, I really like scribbles. It's one of my go-tos with pen and ink because it's easy, but also it kind of fills up space a little bit faster. And it kind of makes this really energetic movement. So like scribbles, try and keep them as random as you possibly can. I do this thing that I like love doing in pen because it's like a habitual thing for me. It's kind of like soothing. I draw 8s. Like that. I will doodle like this. Don't know why. But if you have something like that you like doing, you should maybe try it out to be something that you do for your creature. Scribbles, the biggest thing is that it's random. It should be random. Okay, these three right here are techniques that you are going to make up yourself. So whatever you want to do, let's say instead of like wavy lines, scribbles, or short dashes, you kind of do like, I don't know. You guys just did a bunch of pen and ink research. There was like maybe some scribble, like that kind of scribble. That kind of looks like the eye that we saw. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. You can mix things up. What I would do here is if like you have a furry animal, maybe try and make fur so that you understand like what it's gonna look like. See what different techniques and like different line making things do for you. So these are kind of 3 experimental ones that you are gonna do yourself. For the 3 value scales, you will pick 3 of these separately. So let's say for this first one, I'm gonna do stippling. Now, I will tell you, stippling takes a really long time, and it is one of the coolest things to do and one of the most time-consuming things to do. So I'm gonna just kind of like show you a little bit what I mean by a value scale. So really, really dense dots, it gets further and further and further until it turns into nothing. Okay? Till it basically is nothing. So it goes from darkest to lightest. So for hatching, which for me is faster, you're gonna go really, really dark. And then you're gonna start going softer and then increase the distance until you're at light. Does that make sense? Lightest to darkest. Now, these are pretty long value scales, so I understand if you don't fill up the whole thing, but I want you to try your best to just experiment with dark to light, because that really is important with pen and ink, because you can do a million things, but if you don't understand how to get something to be darker and lighter, then it doesn't matter what you're doing. Because that's the whole point in pen and ink. So do you see how this goes from darker to lighter? These do too, it's just harder to see because it takes a lot longer to do these. Okay, for these little dots right here, what you're gonna do is you are going to connect the dots below using straight lines, one very light, one mid-tone, and one very dark. So this first one, I'm gonna try and do the lightest possible one that I could do, okay? This next one, I'm gonna do slightly darker. This last one, I'm gonna do darker, and I'm gonna keep going over it. And I might even want to switch to a thicker Sharpie to make a thicker line, because it's going to end up looking nicer than me trying to fill in that line. Now, the top one doesn't even seem light compared to this one, so I'm gonna go ahead and give this another woof. So light, medium, dark, okay? As straight as you possibly can do. Okay, we have done spheres before, right? Maybe just one on the cube, remember? We did that sphere. So the way that spheres work when you're doing something that's three-dimensional is the light source hits it, and this area is light. So I'll go in a pencil. This area is your lightest area. This next area is gonna be like a mid-tone, slightly darker mid-tone, your darkest dark, and right here on the edge is called your reflected light. It's actually gonna be lighter here than it is here in like the mid-tone area. So, and then a shadow obviously exists in this, but you don't necessarily have to do that because we are going to be using this idea of form with your creatures because we want them to look like they're three-dimensional and not just flat. So that's the reason why we're doing spheres on this. So I'm gonna do this in hatching because again, hatching's one of my favorite things to do. So I'm gonna start in my darkest area. My darkest area is gonna be around the sphere. Now can you guys tell, like I'm actually trying to form my lines to this flat thing that's supposed to look circular. So you're trying your best to make it feel like it's a part of this contour. Again, more hatching to make it look darker in some areas. The darkest area again is around to the bottom. If we are just hatching, and then I might need to do this thing called cross hatching to make it look even darker if my hatching isn't working quite as thick as I want it to. But then I would leave maybe some of these areas untouched with cross hatching. I actually am going to scribble in some of this just to create density. Does this kind of make sense? I just used like 3 techniques here. So this was hatching, cross hatching, and I used a little bit of scribble. But it looks mostly like hatching, right? because that's where my individual lines show. So the hatching in this stands out. If I want to do stippling, which God bless your soul, if you want to do stippling, it's just going to take you forever. You can do that. I want you to show me 3 different techniques. So let's say that this one's stippling. Again, I will go mad doing this. This is not something that is my cup of tea, and I totally understand it. If you like making tiny little dots, I get it. It's one of the coolest things, and it takes the longest, and I'm now going to stop doing this because I can't handle it. And that's just the small amount of stippling that I will be able to do as a functioning person. My brain just can't do it. So I like to do things that are fast. I'm a fast artist. It's the way that I like looking at things. I will never have the most beautiful craftsmanship because I'm impatient. But if you can sit there and do it, I will give you so many points because that is something I just can't do. If I really sat down and I really focused and I did it, I would be able to do it. It's not like I can't do it, but I don't like doing it, so I try not to. Because if you don't like it, just don't do it. So there's plenty of different ways that you can go about this to create form. This is scribbling, that's cross-hatching, and then again, the stippling, which maybe I will spend the 40 minutes to do this properly. Okay, we have a half hour left in class. What I want you guys to do is finish this, Genius scan it, and turn it into 3.4. Okay? So that's ultimately, when this is finished, this has to be done. Doesn't have to be stippling, but it has to be finished, all 3 of these. Then you can turn it in, okay? And then that's what's due today, okay? And then make sure you have your masks cut out because we'll do screen printing for next class, okay? Thank you guys so much. That was the longest video of my life.